There we go. All right. So this is day 15 of 30 Days of Men in Recovery for National Recovery Month 2016. And I have my friend Roland Williams here to speak to this question that I've been asking all of my friends and all of these wonderful men in recovery. And Roland has had an amazing experience, not only in the field of addiction and recovery, but just your own personal recovery and the work that you've done for so many of the most marginalized populations, those who can't afford $30,000 treatment, that you've remained as their advocate and to help them find the resources and the recovery they need. And that's a great value to me. And I think it's such an incredible testimony to just because our lives get good and just because our lives become full and abundant, we still have something to pay back and to give back, and that there's something that happens when we're able to do that. So thank you for taking the time, not only for being a part of this project, but also for being one of the men that I was able to interview for my last book.
Thank you.
So I start each conversation the same way. What's the greatest gift that recovery has given you toward being the man you always knew you could be?
I think that the greatest gift that I've gotten from my recovery has been the ability to not be a parasite in the world, and actually be someone who contributes to the world. I feel like I've been able to give back, like you said, in so many different ways. Since being a dad, I've raised my wife and I have raised two sons. So I have two adult sons who are, amazing young men, and I was able to be present for all of that. And I'm really grateful for that. In my career, I've been able to make a difference. I feel like I do something that matters. I help people. When people walk away from an interaction with me, they're not bummed out or tore up or feeling ripped off or angry or any of that kind of stuff. I think people walk away thinking that was an okay experience. And that's because of my recovery. Because prior to that, if you came into contact with me, it was probably not a good experience. And I felt like a parasite. A lot of the last decade of my using, it was very animalistic. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm almost the guy that I wanted to be when I grew up.
Nice. And so, you're talking about that idea of contributing and men being of service. That's a powerful narrative for a healthy masculinity. And men being parasites, that's even in our politics, right? So, we see that gross self-centeredness, that toxic masculinity that can show up a lot. I've seen the pictures with your sons, and they look wonderful, and to hear how you talk about them and just the lives that they've got. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to come out of that animalistic place and raise these young men and really, I would guess, communicate with them and relate to them in a way that you didn't get?
Right. Dan, I never knew my dad. So I was adopted, and I was born in Germany, and I was put up for adoption at birth. I was a result of a one-night stand between a GI and a German girl. And as soon as I popped out, they took me right to an orphanage. And so if my dad walked into the room right now, I wouldn't even recognize him. I've never seen him. And I grew up in an alcoholic family, and there were two guys who played the role as stepfather in my life, and both of them, both names were Clarence, by the way, and they were both alcoholics. And one was a violent alcoholic, and one was a happy alcoholic. But neither one of them were good role models. Neither one of them were there for me or anybody else in my family, for that matter. They were also parasites. And so when I had kids, I only have two sons. My first son was actually my first blood. So this was the first person that came from my blood that I knew. first person I was related to by blood that I knew.
Wow.
Not having any positive role models. I mean, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and men had a code, a lot of men, not all of them, of course, but there was like a street code about how a man treated a woman, and men having babies by multiple different women. And, it was just a kind of a twisted idea about manhood and fatherhood. And so I didn't want that for my sons. I was so excited to have a son that looked like me and was from my blood that, I loved him with all my heart. I got clean when he was 4.
Mm.
I've been clean 30 years. So he was 4 years old when I got clean. And even though I was active in my addiction, and I did the best I could do as an active junkie, I was with that baby the whole time, all of the time, because I loved him with all my heart. And as a matter of fact, the reason I got clean was because of my son. People say you can't get clean for your kids or your wife or your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Well, I got clean because of my son. I realized that I didn't care enough about my own life to get clean, but I had no right to continue to put his life in jeopardy. And one morning, sitting on the dock of the bay in San Francisco, I had a moment of clarity, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that you can do whatever you want to do with your old chicken shit life, but you got no right to do that to this kid. And I said, God help me. That started my recovery. So I've been able to be there. One of the things I said is, who's going to take him to Cub Scout meetings? Who's going to teach him how to drive a car? Who's going to teach him how to tie a tie? Who's going to get him ready for the prom? And I realized that I wouldn't. And he would be like me with no dad and no direction. And that was my motivation to get clean. And as a result, I was able to do all those things with my son. Take him to Cub Scout meetings, teach him how to drive, help him tie his tie, help him get ready for the prom. And he turned out to be an amazing young man. And I had a second son who's never seen me drink or use in his life. He's 24 years old. He's never seen his dad take a drink or a drug. And both of these young men have watched, I've been married 26 years. And so both of these young men have watched me go to work every day, 2 and 3 jobs like you, and treat my wife with respect. I don't call my wife out of her name. I've never put my hands on her. I don't cuss at her. And they've watched this. They've watched the father be present, be affectionate. I kiss them both. I hug them both to this day. And my youngest son is 6'6". He weighs about 310. 17 shoe. Every day I see him, every time I see him, we hug and kiss. And I do that with both of these boys. So they know affection, they know respect, they know the value of hard work. They know about recovery. They grew up in the rooms, both of them as kids. I took them to meetings with me, so they know where to go when and if they ever needed that. So I feel blessed. I think that there's a lot to be said for, us being there and role modeling and being present and showing them what it means to be a man. Not only a man in recovery, but a man in a relationship, a man in the world, a man in the workplace.
There's so much there. I mean, but overall, it's just such a beautiful sentiment that you shared. The love of a father, not only to be there for a son, but to get clean, to step into that life of recovery. And I think of my relationship with my father. I think of my own challenges. I've got a little girl, 7 years old, and so we're in the process right now. And I think of the saying that sometimes being a father is giving everything you never got. And in doing that, you get it. And that's what I really hear coming from you. You've been very successful in the field. And what's great is that it sounds like your greatest success really would be your 2 boys, would be the marriage and the 2 boys, these connections, these relationships. But what advice would you have for men? I mean, you've got 30 years, so congratulations on that. What a gift, right? To walk this path that long and to see how committed you still are. I see the pictures you post with your old buddies and with new buddies. And I mean, it's just wonderful to see that. You've done a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't probably work you couldn't even imagine a 2, 3, 5 years of recovery. So I'm a man listening to this. I got 2, 3 years of recovery. I kind of feel like I got it all worked out.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say to me?
Well, I just got a call this morning about a guy, a man, a very wealthy man who died last night. They found him dead last night. And we're pretty sure it was a result of his relapsing. Well, I don't even know if you can call it relapse. You can't relapse if you've never been in recovery.
Yeah.
But I think it's a result of his continued struggle with his addiction. And I know that all things are possible if we stay clean. I think, and all things are possible if we start drinking and drugging again. One of the things that I feel lucky about is the way that my addiction was. I only went into recovery one time. I went into rehab in June of 1986, and I haven't picked up a drink or a drug since then. And I feel lucky because the way my addiction was, it was so miserable. I mean, it was so devastating. It took all of me. A friend of mine said the other day, he said, once we start using, we know what we're going to get from the drugs, but we don't know what we're going to have to give back. We don't know what the price is going to be, what we're going to have to pay. We know if I take cocaine, I'm going to be high, I'm going to be stimulated, but I don't know what I'm going to have to pay, what it's going to take from me. And it took everything from me. I mean, I was disgusted with myself in the end. I had no control. Once I started using, I couldn't stop. I was an overdosing addict. So when I got clean, I never had this fantasy of maybe I can be a social user, or maybe I can smoke a little of that non-addictive organic marijuana, or maybe I can have a glass of wine with dinner. I knew from the gate that if I start drinking and drugging, that one was too many and 1,000's never enough. So I'm lucky in that way that I have never had that kind of, desire to kind of test it, because I know what'll happen if I test it. And I realize that that's a blessing in and of itself, because a lot of people don't have that. Some people never lose the cravings and the urges. And even when they're not using, it doesn't feel good for them. They don't feel good about being clean. They feel miserable. They feel like they're just waiting for the next chance they get to use. I heard somebody say that it's one thing to know that recovery is possible. It's another thing to realize that recovery is preferable. For a lot of people, recovery never gets preferable. So for those people who are struggling with, can I, maybe I should go out and try it a little bit, or maybe, maybe I'm not really an addict or an alcoholic, or, I would just encourage people to give it some time to think it through. Play it forward. What's going to happen if you pick up? Imagine yourself a day later, a week later, a month later. What is the price are you willing to pay? What are you willing to pay for the pleasure of having one more hit? And know that everybody with 30 years and 20 years and 15 years, they started with 30 days. And it just keeps adding up, if you don't pick up. I would encourage people to think it through. There's no guarantee if you relapse that you're going to make it back for another bout of recovery. Next time somebody drinks or drugs could be the last time they drink or drugs.
I just moved to California, and so I was in Minnesota for 18 years, and I had a powerful recovery community, and I knew a lot of men, and there was a man who started coming back to meetings about 3 or 4 months before I left, and I already knew that I was going to be moving, so I was really listening to people before I left about different aspects of recovery. And this guy had 13, 14 years of recovery. He went out for 10 years, and listening to him say, he said, I never knew it would be this hard to come back. He said, I desperately wanted to come back and I couldn't. All the strength I tried to marshal, everything I tried to do, he said, I really wanted to come back and it's taken me this long to get here. And I heard the
Yeah.
desperation, the gratitude, the desperation, and the genuineness of that statement. And I thought, man, I mean, you just don't know what you're being spared of, right? And it's hopeful that you can learn from other people's experience.
Yeah. Yeah, they say that it's easier to stay clean than it is to get clean again.
I believe that. So, Roland, it's always wonderful to see you. You're a wonderful example of recovery in so many aspects. I love that you took the time to talk about your sons. We always choose a word of the day for these interviews, and to me, you tell me if this sounds right for you, but to me, the word of the day would be father. Is really what I hear coming through. Not that your 26 years of marriage isn't important.
I understand.
Yeah, but because of your relationship with your father, I mean, that's powerful to hear you say your first blood relative was your son. That I've never heard it quite described that way. So I just want to really thank you for being a part of this series, this project, and I always ask my guests to have the last word. And so I just want to wish you a happy Recovery Month. Congratulations again on 30 years. And as I like to say, take us home.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you, Dan, for all the work that you're doing. You've been a real, champion for the voice of men in recovery, oftentimes a voice that never gets heard, a perspective that never gets heard. So I want to thank you and share my appreciation for the work that you're doing. You're a good man. And
thank you.
Yeah. So congratulations and keep up the great work.
Thank you. All right. Enjoy Arizona.
All right. Bye.